Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tension of Opposites. This is going to be a bit of an update episode, rather than an episode. Maybe in the future I will do a proper episode about this, but I have this distinct feeling that if I don't talk about this now, if I don't put into feelings what is going on through my head right now, I will forget all about this. And it would be very ironic considering that this has been my life for the past, technically 8-ish months, but a year. So it's been officially 1 year since I discussed my thesis, and so since I finished my thesis, and this year just put me through a loop. It has been such a weird experience from so many points of view, very isolating, very lonely, and just it can just be summarized in, what the hell am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm going. I don't have a plan. What is the plan? And then trying to put into effect different plans, and nothing really pans out. But I remember distinctly a year ago when I met with the boyfriend of a friend of mine who I didn't really know that well. I mean, I knew him always through her, but he happened to be in Malta on holiday, and so we met up for a drink, but everything was very fresh in my head of, okay, so I graduated 1 week before, and I discussed my thesis online, and so you just received the vote via mail. It was very unofficial as a thing, on a Zoom meeting in my room on my own. Everything felt incredibly underwhelming as an experience, and then being like, oh, but I actually did finish a 2-year cycle of something, but it didn't have that sort of solemn feeling to it. And we went out for a drink, and I was telling him how I was doing, and I just burst out crying in front of him. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And little did I know that was just the beginning of a year. So this is a very informal sort of presentation, just a run through what have been. I don't think I can even remember what I've been through this entire year, but now that this chapter is concluding, in a sense, I can feel certain feelings leaving from my body as if they never happened, and I want to acknowledge them because they did happen and they did define this year more than anything else. So this is 27. Maybe this could be the title. This is 27. 27 has been awful. 27 has been truly a mindfuck. I think it's normal. I think it's expected. I don't think I know any other 27 person who hasn't had that feeling. And actually a couple of weeks ago, a girl that I spoke to randomly, she also told me, yeah, because then so many people died at 27. I was like, yeah, that is true. You know, there was a moment where it really feels like you're supposed to be peaking pre-30. And so all the people that, remember like the J27 and such, they peaked and then they never got to grow old, and you just see them at that. But even like people who did become older, you just remember them from their peak moments of when they were in their 20s, the sort of Friends effect, which is so belittling in a sense. I mean, there's so much more to a person, but the way that things are perceived, it really feels that after you turn 25. And I know that anyone older than that is just going to be like, girl, shut up, please. You're so young. But you do have this messaging that, I don't know, like you have to have done stuff. You have to have reached everything in life. It seems like by 30, but already you're young and you've peaked and you're exceptional if you've done it before 25. This is like the feeling that you're getting. But yeah, I digress. I wrote down my interviewing experience, looking for a job experience. I did another episode, so this is a part 2 of this episode with Charlotte, but I feel like when I did that episode with her, she caught me on a good week. I was on a good week. I really felt like talking about it, but it was a very logical experience and recounting of what we had been through, because we were going through it together in very different ways. And I definitely want to be able to do that kind of content in the future and have some tactical approach and suggestions that I can give to people. But the reality is that it was just ugly. It was ugly, and it was sad, and it was depressing, and there wasn't much to do at this point in life. And I think just in the last weeks, I reached some sort of understanding that sort of brought me to peace. And now here we are. So let me just preface with, I've been looking for a job for X amount of months. So I graduated last June. This week, for the first time, I received an actual job offer. I received an actual email that said, I am happy to confirm to you, which, by the way, if people haven't received a confirmation email, this is what it looks like, because after so many, after careful consideration, we regret to inform you. After careful consideration, we regret to inform you. The one that I received last Friday was, we just found a better suited candidate, and it just killed me to my core. So I was in Malta for 2 weeks last week. I came back last Sunday. And again, I think a lot of this experience is really tied to expectations. This has been a very hard year for me mentally. And in my head, I was going to go there. My friend was going to meet me there. And I was just not thinking about anything for a couple of weeks, see my family, go around, be back in Malta, because I've been living back in Rome with my parents for the past year, which is a whole chapter in itself. And it was anything other than that. I ended up doing 3 interviews in 2 weeks. One feedback call where I got a rejection last Friday. So last Friday I was dead. I was so depressed. But every day was a microcosm in itself. I can't even recount what I did every single day, because so many feelings happened and so many things happened, and you had these super highs and super lows that all happened to be in the same day. And I was actually quite excited and proud of myself of how I was not necessarily bouncing back, but I was actually going through the motions in a much better way. So in the beginning of this process, when I would get a rejection of some sort, it would be debilitating. I wouldn't be able to go out for a couple of days. And to think that last Friday, I got a rejection in the afternoon, I was with my friend, had an ugly cry in front of my friend, went back home, and I went out in the evening and I went dancing. I was like, okay, yeah, I can do 2 things at once. And I wasn't trying to be a different person. I wasn't trying to pretend that I wasn't going through it. It was just, I'm feeling everything I need to feel at this point in time. I came back from Malta last Sunday thinking, okay, this is it. If I don't get this last interview, and I know that it really feels fake. Everyone says that. I've heard this so many times, but I truly said this. Like, if I don't get this job now, I'm just giving up on this sector for a while. It's been shit. I've been looking for it for the longest time. If this is not going to work out, I will just do something else for the summer, because I know that in the summer they don't post jobs. And then Monday I was just really nauseous, because I knew that this recruitment process has been the fastest recruitment process I've ever been involved in. And so I was thinking, okay, if they don't get back to me on Monday, it means that I wasn't selected. And then on Tuesday, I got the news in the morning. So now everything is moving at a very fast pace. A lot of things are going to be changing, and I don't think I have physically the time to wrap my head around what is happening. But I remember in the episode that I did with Charlotte that I said that. I said, I feel like I'm just like a catapult, like I am going backwards, and I see that everyone is going ahead of me, and then once it's going to go boom, 0 to 100 like that. So it feels very on brand for me. But to just do a run through of all that has been the process, I have definitely forgot things that I've done. And maybe in the future I will be going into them, naming the organizations. At this point in time, I don't really feel like doing that. So I will be dividing them. These are all humanitarian organizations. I will divide them within church international organizations, church national organizations, so like Italian organizations, INGOs, so international organizations, and local NGOs. Yeah, I think we're going to leave it at that. And UN organizations, of course. I started looking for a job in September because I graduated, and then I said, you know what, I need my summer. Like, it was the last thing on my mind, the idea of looking for a job in the summer. I didn't give a shit. I just wanted to enjoy it. And what I was doing in the summer was working as an extra, because in Malta they were filming Gladiator, and so I applied to be an extra, and I was supposed to be there for around 3 weeks-ish. They pay you around 100 euros a day, a little bit more if you do overtime. And it was interesting, but it was brutal. It was just bad working conditions for like these big budget Hollywood movies, just because the heat was absolutely unbearable. The conditions were bad. So I did 1 week. Then I got COVID because I got COVID for the first time, actually. We were we weren't 700, but I think we were around 100-ish people, 100 to 100 people, dressed in these period clothes. So like I was a Roman citizen. The heat was absolutely unbearable. We had to film this in a Colosseum. So I thought, okay, I'll do this for the summer. I'll put, some money aside for the summer, and then I can enjoy it and I'll look for a job. And already from the summer, things didn't really work out. So this thing happened in July. Then my family came over. I had been living in Malta for a year and a half by then. So I had to take some days off because that's coincided with where my family was coming. But in all, I did around, 1 week-ish. Maybe not even a week, actually. I think like maybe 4 or 5 days. And the pickup times are really bad. So 3 o'clock in the morning and all that, but you did it, and you know that it's money that is coming. It wasn't the most pleasant experience, but it was an experience, and we were all going through the same thing together, so it was good. But then I get COVID, so I'm out for a week. And then once COVID is done, they give us this email. So this is July of last year. And we get this email that says that the strikes were happening. And so if the strikes were going to happen, then everything was going to be suspended. And so that's what happened. Something that hadn't happened in the past, I don't remember, 50-something years, we get this email and I'm like, are you kidding me? Of all the times this could have happened. I had already done the extra another couple of times, but never so consistently. I could not believe it. And that got me really, really down bad because I had missed a week because of COVID. Because then I found out that people on the crew also had COVID, but nobody gave a shit. So yay. And then I missed 1 week and then I could only do another 3 things. So I think in total, I got maybe 750 euros, which is not bad. Don't get me wrong. It's just for sitting down and doing nothing. But obviously the prospect was going to be to get over 1,000 euros. And then, you don't get that. And that was already a big setback. Then in August, I actually get approached by a recruiter from UNHCR saying that in Malta they were looking for a communications officer in UNHCR and if I was interested. And of course, I had to redo my CV because I hadn't updated it in the longest time. And I sent it to him. This was, I still remember, this was the 4th of August. Because at this time there was this thing that was weighing on me that if I didn't find a job, it didn't really make sense for me to be in Malta. But I assumed that was going to happen. But I thought that maybe I was going to come back after the summer. But then when my parents came, they said, listen, what are you just going to stay here around for a couple of months? It doesn't make sense. So if you need to stay in your job searching phase and you're not putting any money aside, and so we can do it for you. And so out of nowhere, this timeline of, oh, wait, so I'm actually leaving the country for good in August. I hadn't realized that. I just assumed that in my head, everything was after the summer. But it made sense. So that was stressing me out. And then this thing happened in the beginning of August. So I said, oh my God, what if this happens immediately? And I have to be honest. Everything I will say of my thought process will probably sound incredibly obnoxious. This is a jump in the timeline. A big jump, so probably doesn't even explain where I'm coming from. And it does sound obnoxious because I am obnoxious. I think if anything, this experience has taught me is that I needed to be humbled. And I'm still not humbled, but I needed to be humbled, definitely, because I think from how my professional career started, I just got very lucky, very quick. And I also come from a very privileged background, which allowed me to do a lot of things. So things always just worked out for me in terms of studies, academia, the beginning of my job search. And if I had wanted to, if I hadn't done this master's, I would still be in a pretty solid, very well-paying job in another country. Not something that I necessarily wanted to continue doing, but I chose not to do it because I wanted to pursue something that was more aligned with what I want to learn about, which was the humanitarian sector. I do understand that I'm doing a big time jump, and I'll have the time to backtrace and go through the rest of my series and sort of explain all of it. But I think it's important to understand that my idea of what the job search would have been now, after having worked 2-ish years and having experience, was very different from what the reality was. And I also think that I just stumbled upon an incredibly unlucky year in general, where there was already the war in Ukraine, so a lot of divesting of the majority of the nations were going towards that. And then there was the conflicts in the Middle East. And so there was a lot of financial crises already, even before the 7th of October. So it just was a bad time in general. And on top of that, the European elections, which are happening now, When I went to visit my colleagues back in Brussels in November 2023, they were already saying that given that there were going to be the new European elections, everything was a bit stalling, even from an institutional standpoint, because at this point, they were just going to wait for the new elections and then everything would have started up again. So from the UN perspective, from little NGO perspective, which already didn't really have a lot of funds, governments that were not funding international fellowships like they were used to, from every single standpoint, everything was a bit either halted or there was a financial crisis. Even from the HQ, big INGO HQs such as ICRC or IOM in Geneva, they were just laying off people. So this year in general was just, I think, very unlucky from that standpoint. But I didn't know any of that. Nobody prepared me on that. Even I did a career development semester where we had to redo our CVs and what are the websites. And they always tell you that networking is important, but they never really go into the details of how critical it is to create a solid network. So I didn't know any of that. I just thought, okay, I have experience in communications. I don't want to continue doing communications because I want to try something different. And in my recent year, I was working in a local NGO, a Catholic NGO in Malta, working with migrants, more on outreach and integration activities. And I really, 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 truly enjoyed it. We developed an outreach proposal where I did a mapping of all the migrant community organizations that were based in Malta, formal and informal. And we started this process of reaching out to them individually, interviewing them, and putting them into contact with local authorities. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So that's what I wanted to go towards. So when I got approached for a communication officer role, I was thinking, yeah, but I don't really want to. But obviously I was thinking, okay, maybe this is something I can do in the meantime. I can stay in Malta, then I can figure out what I want to do. But from the moment that this person said, okay, just wait for the official application to open up and then you can apply, I just never heard from them again. Like, they approached me in August for this role, and the official vacancy was posted mid-October. So obviously, in the meantime, other stuff had happened. I went back to Rome. It just didn't make sense for me to continue staying in Malta. But it was absurd to think, why the hell did you approach me? And they were saying they're urgently looking for, and then they didn't even post the vacancy until end of October. So I don't really know what happened there. But that was my first understanding that UN organizations are insane. Their waiting periods are absolutely insane. I got 3-4 rejections now for some positions in Kaiserslautern, Germany. Always, I guess, protection roles that I had applied for in January. So insane, absolutely insane. But obviously I had no idea about it. But anyways, I started officially looking for a job in September. I applied to everything that I can find. But the big problem is that there was literally nothing that I could apply that was within my junior level expertise. I was very, very strong on not wanting to do an internship because I found it ridiculous. I found it unethical. I had already done 5 internships. I just didn't want to do it anymore. I had the experience. It made no sense. I did it as part of my master's. There was no reason why I had to be doing an internship. So I was like, no, it will take me longer, but I will look for a job. So then my friends, they were split. The people who did the master's with me, they were split in who managed to found a job during the master's and who was doing an internship. But I was thinking, no, I don't want to do this now. I want to look for a job, well, and whatever. September was useless. Like September, there were physically no jobs. There was nothing I could apply to. And that's when I learned that looking for the job in the summer would have been useless anyways, because they just don't post stuff in the summer. There's no way. So I guess advice number 1, the high peak moment would be from February to May, because the last quarter of the year, nobody cares. Nobody's looking for it. So that was hard to learn. But anyways, so September I started looking for a job, don't really find stuff, but I wasn't very discouraged. October, I started getting very stressed. End of October, we have our graduation ceremony, and it was so weird to go to a graduation ceremony without having a job. So it wasn't a graduation ceremony having found a job, having had experience, and, or that it was fresh. We just finished discussing our thesis, so everyone was just excited. No, it was a few months in the job search, so everyone was just very weirded out by it. But everyone was going more or less through the same thing. Many people had opted for just looking for something outside of our field of interest, and that was okay as well. But I was thinking, okay, it's still fresh. It's fine. It's October goes around, November goes around. November I start getting wobbly. November I go to Brussels. Brussels is where I worked. It's where I started my experience, because I had found an internship in the European Commission. And then I just ended up working there for a year and a half-ish. And so the friends that I left when I left to do my master's, in the meantime, have just skyrocketed their careers. They're in such a stable phase of life in terms of, either partnerships, jobs, promotions, houses. Everyone is in a very, very, very solid place financially. And so that was wobbly for me as an experience, because it makes you think, okay, what did I do? Why did I do this? So obviously I passed by the office and I got to speak to my colleagues and asked them if there were any openings, and there was the possibility of something, but then it had just been filled up. But everyone was telling me the same thing. Like even my organization that I worked in, they were all going through this like reorganization period of the organogram. And so everything was wobbly, everything was halted. And by then the conflict in the Middle East had started. So by conflict, obviously, I do mean a right-on invasion and now genocide, but just to put things into context, because obviously it spread to other parts of the Middle Eastern region as well. So at that time, so I went around the 8th of November. It's like some people were like, yeah, but because it's the last quarter, people are not really going to be posting jobs anymore because it's basically Christmas. And 8th of November. And people were telling me it's basically Christmas. So obviously that wasn't very wonderful to hear. December, as you can imagine, I think the worst month of this entire experience was December. Like hands down, December was just horrible. Absolutely horrible, because not only you're not finding anything, but the holidays are approaching. You start dreading any sort of holiday break, because you know that that's when people are not going to be posting vacancies, looking at things. In the meantime, all of this, I maybe got up to sending 70 applications, probably a bit more. I was not hearing back from people other than rejections, like nothing. And I really thought, okay, I'm going to apply and I'm going to have my experiences and then I'll just choose what the best option is for me. Psych! That was really, really bad judgment on my end. So my confidence was killing me. But December was horrible because you have all your friends coming back, and like you're usually the person who has been living in other places, and you're the person who comes back for a couple of weeks, says hi to all their friends, and then you just leave again. And this was the first time that I was the one who was here. I had a hard time also having friendships at this point, because I was just feeling so sad and so down on life, and I just didn't want to have interactions with people. It was really bothering me. And on top of that, you have the holidays coming around. You realize that the end of the year, everything is very cathartic in that sense as well. All your friends are coming back from all the places that they live in, telling you how great their lives are, and you want to be happy for your friends so bad. You really do. But you just can't. Like, you just feel so bad, and you hate when they ask you, how are you doing? Because you just burst out crying. Like, there's nothing much you can say. So I don't think I ever understood the dreading the holidays part as much as this year. Definitely more, is it empathetic or empathic? I never understood that. But anyways, I definitely have more empathy towards anyone who goes through that for a variety of different reasons. But for me, this year, it was just particularly hard. The holidays, I just couldn't talk about what I was feeling without just bursting out crying. But in all of this, obviously the networking component had to start moving in some sense, because I tried cold approaches. I don't know what they're called. I tried to reach out to people through interests and profiles on LinkedIn, but everyone was telling me more or less the same thing. So the gist is, try to get paid internships. Don't accept unpaid internships. It's very hard until you get to 5 years. But once you get to 5 years of experience, it's great. So you're like, okay, wonderful. Wonderful stuff that you're telling me. So at this point, I started going to career fairs, and I got some other contacts, and then even that didn't really lead to anything. But I thought, okay, I need to apply to internships. I don't think I have an option. And I applied to internships and I didn't even get those. Like I never heard from people back even from internships. So that was fun. But a contact of a contact, blah, blah, blah. You know, those usual things, pass on my CV, I'll send it on. And that happened. And I got an interview for international Catholic organization. But the interview also in itself was a bit weird because when they do these sort of interviews where you have just sent a CV to someone and you just get called for an interview for a vacancy that you didn't properly apply for, you don't understand what they want from you. You don't know how much you can ask because it's these informal things. You don't know how much you can ask, written. So you assume, okay, maybe they need to formally show that I'm going to be formally recruited for something, although I never saw this vacancy. And then I go there and they just try to sense what the situation is. I don't know. So I go to do this interview for a monitoring and evaluation officer, which of course I had no experience for that. And side note to that, it is very annoying when people tell you, oh, but you just need to believe in yourself. You do have the experience. You never know. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take and all that stuff. No, if you don't have the experience, you don't have the experience. Like, I do get that at some point you need to lie or you need to, stretch the truth. But if you don't have it, you don't have it. So it feels very debilitating when you go to do something because they're like, trust me, try it, do it. And then they do ask you very technical questions that you don't have because you have not done that. So it went a bit like that. So we were given a questionnaire before going, where it was a bit more about what were the hard experiences, what was a difficult experience that you had to manage, why do you want to apply for this position, which was and another one that I don't remember, it was 3 questions. Probably when I'll do a very technical one on the humanitarian field, I will go through all the things that I did, but this is just off of what I remember. And then when I went to do the interview, it was a proper interview, so there was another written portion where we had to explain a bit the monitoring and evaluation component. They were interviewing for a monitoring and evaluation officer and a networking assistant position. So networking between the different branches of the same international organization. And I was thinking, okay, I could totally do that. I did that when I was in Malta. But the monitoring and evaluation part, I just didn't know it and they didn't tell us. So it was weird. Then I did the actual interview, but you could tell that it was more of a, yes, we shortlisted the profiles that we were interested in. We just want to know what you like, what you don't like. They didn't ask me anything technical because I didn't have experience with the technical stuff. And so obviously I didn't get it. So you never know really exactly how much these are more of a favor to someone. And it feels very weird to talk about it like this, but this is the reality of most of the things. Formal recruitment is probably 50% of this, especially in this field. That's just how it is. So that didn't land. And okay. Then holidays happen. I think, okay, I want a new year, new me. I want to get strategic about this. I'm going to apply for UN volunteers. So UN volunteers is something you can do both on site and online, but Italian governments really don't fund much about the UNVs. So I just applied for a 2-week online voluntary assignment just to get something on my CV, because in the meantime the gap was getting bigger and it was stressing me out. So I did a mapping of diaspora community organizations, Lebanese diaspora community organizations in select regions. It was a very simple, I had done mapping with always this Maltese organization, and so it was just going through these organizations, and that I did that for 2 weeks. But then when I was halfway through it, I was like, why am I doing this for free? I don't get it. I feel like it makes sense. It was only 2 weeks, but they should give you something in return, at least at a minimum, putting you into contact with someone from the UN, having a one-on-one call for an hour, something. So obviously, I asked this guy how he got to work with this organization. It was a UN organization in Lebanon, and he did the same UNV, but he did 2 UNVs, I think, for a total of 6 months, and then he got hired. But no, I'm not going to be doing 6 months free. I can't. So that was the experience. It didn't really lead to anything, but at least I got to put something on my CV. So we just left it at that. Then I didn't hear any positive requests for interviews until the end of February 2024. So by now we're at 6 months-ish, I think. November, December, January. Yes, we're at 6 months in my job search. So you hear nothing. You're just sending these bottles into the ocean, these messages with the bottles into the ocean. You don't hear anything for 6 months, and then you get interview. Once you start getting into the interview phase of this, it is ironically more sad and debilitating than just getting a rejection, because you get so used to getting rejections that it just doesn't feel like anything anymore. You don't have the time to envision yourself in a role and hope for it. Instead, with the interviews, it's different because you actually do get to meet them and they meet you, and there's all this energy of wanting to impress and how are you coming off, and everything is done online, and it's really weird in that sense. You never know what to do. I did a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sorry, I'm getting a bit lost, 6, 7, 8 interviews. So I did 8 interviews with 8 different organizations. And within these interviews, there's multiple interviews that I've done. So the total is much higher than this. And every single interview that I have done, even with the same organization, is completely different from one another. I definitely, I guess, can pick up a bit more things now. But yes, you just do not know what you're expecting. So the first organization that got back to me was an international NGO in Malta that I had already done volunteering with, but it's a very, very small NGO in Malta. They're known, but it's a smaller NGO in Malta. So it was for an outreach worker position. Actually, there were 2 part-time positions. I applied as culture mediator and outreach worker, hoping that I could combine them and make a full-time. So they contacted me for an interview. I do an interview. The interview probably lasted 20 minutes, if that. And it wasn't an interview. It just wasn't an interview. So the part-time position for outreach worker was actually a part-time. It was 20 hours a month. And that was not advertised anywhere on their vacancy. And so what they wanted was someone to go into the 2 main cities where there's the highest majority of migrants and talk to them, present the organization, and tell them, basically do marketing for the organization after working hours. That's it. That was the job. So it didn't make sense. So it just felt, and then I asked them how much they would pay, and they said that the budget wasn't even approved yet. So you're like, okay, what am I basing this off of? Because they were very clear and they said, we didn't know that you were living in Rome, because should you be selected, we would need someone to start immediately. And I said, oh, it's fine. I can move there on short notice. I have contacts. It's absolutely fine. And then when they spoke to me, it really felt like it was more, rather than an interview, it was more sitting me down saying, hey, you do know that this is not an actual job, right? And so the interview kind of ended up being like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that's weird. So when I got a rejection from them, I didn't even expect anything of it. I would have rejected them had they gotten me, because it just didn't make sense. And the rejection was always like, oh, we found a better candidate. Yeah, okay, sure. So yeah, after the second that I finished that interview, which lasted maybe half an hour, I was like, yeah, this is definitely not going to work. But I think the week after, I get contacted by 2 organizations. So I'm thinking, okay, finally, I see everything as karma. I'm on a roll. Things are happening now. It's amazing. I actually don't know if I can continue doing this because I have to leave in 20 minutes. So we'll leave it off at that. And we'll get into the section of March, which is pretty wild. Hi everyone, this is me trying to speak as low as possible to keep it coherent with the audio that you've listened to until now. The second part is ready, and I thought to make it into one episode, but yeah, update not happening. The difference in the audio is just so insane that it didn't really make sense. So we're gonna leave it at that for now, just a little teaser. Half an hour is the, I guess, shortest episode I've ever done until now. And not to worry, the next one is going to be much, much longer than this. So I hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time.